All right, so here we're going to look at sex-linked traits. If you remember, sex-linked traits are traits where the gene is actually found on a sex chromosome. So typically the X chromosome, there's a lot more genes on the X chromosome than the Y. So we're almost always going to be finding examples of the X-linked traits. So they could be called sex-linked traits or X-linked traits, and they're usually recessive as well. But remember, they are not found on our autosomes. So they will show up differently in males and females, more often in males because males only need one recessive to be inherited to express that trait, where females need to inherit two recessives, and she's more likely to inherit a dominant and a recessive if she does inherit one recessive. So we actually have a variety of examples here. You'll see for number 8 is a little bit of an intro of a variety of traits. So we will be seeing some different traits that we'll use as examples. So hemophilia is one of the traits that are inherited as a sex-linked trait. Colorblindness, as well as muscular dystrophy. So this just gives you a little intro on each of those traits, as well as how you would set up the genotypes. So notice here that genotypes need to include the X and the Y chromosomes, depending if we're talking about male or female, as well as the genotype itself. So the genotype is written as a superscript, kind of like an exponent, or like we saw in multiple alleles with blood typing. The only thing that's different here is that if it's a sex-linked trait and it's found on the X chromosome, the information on the X and Y chromosome are different, so we will have information recorded differently. So for the X chromosome in this example, where we're talking about a male that is hemophiliac, we notice we have the recessive allele, but on the Y there is nothing recorded because there's no gene associated with this trait. So let's take a look at letter A here. So for letter A, we have a woman that is a carrier of hemophilia. So let's talk about the term carrier. A carrier means you have the allele, but you're not expressing it, which means it is masked and it is recessive. So we need to account for that. So we know this individual is female, so we need 2 X chromosomes. Remember, these are just the chromosomes. These are not the genotype. If she is a carrier, then she has the dominant, which is masking the recessive, but she can pass down the recessive to her offspring. In this case, she marries a man who is hemophiliac. So we have XY because we have a male. And then since he is hemophiliac and hemophilia is recessive, we have the lowercase h. So I'll do my key here. Capital H. I'll do the X and the H so it's clear. Remember, the H is actually the allele, but since it is a sex-linked trait, we need to account for the X as well. And X with a little h means hemophilia. So this Punnett square let's make this a little bit bigger to account for the extra letters. All right, so our female, X dominant H, X recessive H, and then for a male, X recessive H, and then Y with no allele. Transfer those into our Punnett square to show the possible offspring. So notice with our offspring here, we are not only accounting for the genotype and the phenotype, but also if the individual is male or female. So our question here, what is the probability that the offspring will be hemophiliac? So notice that this individual is homozygous recessive. So that individual is hemophiliac. This individual, while it's a male, only has one recessive allele, but no dominant to mask that. So there's a 50% chance that the offspring will be hemophiliac. You could differentiate if the individual is male or female, but we just did a straight probability of hemophiliac. Notice the other two offspring here. The female offspring would be heterozygous, also a carrier, but does not express the trait. The male individual is simply dominant. All right, so you can perform B, C, and D as practice, and that will be turned in with your assignment.